He brought 800 bandits to join the army, but was laughed at by 3 officials in public. There were 5,000 enemy troops in Xucheng, and he was just trying to hit a rock with an egg. The 3 officials did not believe him at first, because 2 months ago, Pang Qingyun was defeated in the Qing attack on the Taiping army, and all 1,500 soldiers in a battalion died, and only he, a general, survived. After such a great defeat and humiliation, an ordinary person would have retired if he had not died, but he actually gathered 800 new brothers in just 2 months and made a comeback. One official decided to believe him, and in this way, Pang Qingyun had a second chance to make a contribution. But when he arrived at the officials' barracks, the generals here refused to fight. It turned out that although the official Chen supported him, he had no intention of sending troops. Among the 3 officials, although the official Chen's official rank was second only to the official Dai in the middle, his power was the weakest. The official Jiang on the left is the lowest in rank, but he has the most and strongest soldiers. Kui Camp is his camp. When Pang Qingyun was defeated, he and Kui Camp joined forces to kill the enemy, but Kui Camp retreated, leaving Pang Qingyun alone to fight. That's when his army was annihilated. Now, he knows that he is just a pawn of these officials. They should cherish their soldiers, and Pang Qingyun and his soldiers can be sacrificed, but he still wants to gamble. This battle is not optimistic. Pang Qingyun's Shan camp was assigned broken muskets, frying pans instead of decent shields, and untrained soldiers. These teenagers were bandits not long ago. It turned out that 2 months ago, after Pang Qingyun crawled out of the pile of dead bodies, he was hungry and came to a village destroyed by war. He exchanged his general's uniform and sword for a copper coin. But there was no food in the village. In order to eat, he came to a refugee den. Everyone seemed to be waiting for something. Sure enough, a group of horseback bandits with sickles and axes came. They distributed steamed buns to the refugees and called on the men who had eaten to join them as bandits. Although Pang Qingyun was hungry, he did not grab the steamed buns on the ground. At this time, the young bandit leader found him and saw a pair of general boots on his feet. He was tempted. The bandit leader wanted to kill him. But Pang Qingyun spared his life. The bandit leader smiled and invited Pang Qingyun to join his team. Pang Qingyun had nowhere to go, so he followed the bandit leader. It turned out that they were going to rob military rations. In those years, the war was chaotic, and there were prostitutes everywhere. There was no food within 100 miles. If you didn't rob military rations, you would die. The bandit leader just now was named Jiang Wuyang, and he was the second in command. The eldest brother is this man, named Zhao Erhu. They knew in advance that a group of Taiping troops was about to pass through an uninhabited valley. They had guns and armor, but they also had food and livestock. The bandits did not have good weapons and armor, but they had prepared a sophisticated ambush. The battle started with the traps on the ground, and the leading cavalrymen fell to the ground one after another. Then, the second in command fell from the sky, and he stabbed the small leader like thunder, and then went away along the rope. At that moment, the bandits suddenly shouted loudly, and the momentum was huge. They launched 3 consecutive surprise attacks, which frightened the Taiping army. Everyone hurried to flee, but forgot to estimate the number of enemy troops. The bandits cast a net on the food and grass part, and the leader Zhao Erhu led the cavalry to charge in, and soon occupied the food and grass. He called for hundreds of responses, and his men were extremely brave. The Taiping army had several times more people, but they were still losing ground. Pang Qingyun was observing the battle on the cliff. He saw the second in command fighting with many enemies, and there were dangers everywhere. At the critical moment, Pang Qingyun took action. He caught the knife with his bare hands and saved the second in command's life. He stared at the little leader in the distance. The leader wanted to kill Zhao Erhu, but Pang Qingyun rushed like a bull, killing 4 people in a row. He passed through the crowd and came near the leader. The leader's musket could not fire continuously, and Pang Qingyun was sure that he was afraid to use his weapon, so he approached him step by step. In the end, the leader gave up killing Zhao Erhu. To capture a thief, you must first capture the leader. As the leader fell, the Taiping army also collapsed. This battle was dangerous, but they won. Pang Qingyun also became a god in one battle. and he was worshipped by the bandits. This group of bandits came from various provinces. Many of them were homeless refugees, ranging from teenagers to middle-aged men in their 50s. This was the mid-19th century. The Qing court was corrupt, and the people were living in poverty. The Taiping Rebellion rose up against the Qing Dynasty, and China fell into a 14-year civil war, causing nearly 70 million deaths. This number is the total number of deaths in the world during World War II. Zhao Erhu recruited many refugees to return to his village together. This was a mining village where farming was impossible, and the workers left behind were all old, weak women and children. When they saw the men coming back, the lifeless atmosphere suddenly disappeared, and everyone waved and cheered. The men brought sheep and pigs and distributed rice and food to each villager, with laughter and joy. In a trance, there was a sense of glory and satisfaction in ancient times when the tribe went out hunting. Only when food was snatched could the village light a fire. The undisputed leader here is Zhao Erhu. His accomplices come from various provinces, but it doesn't matter that they think this is home, and they call each other brothers. At dinner, they will leave an empty seat to toast the dead brothers. This is the rule set by Zhao Erhu. After dinner, Zhao Erhu came to Pang Qingyun. It turned out that he had seen Pang Qingyun's background. After learning about Pang Qingyun, Erhu toasted him a glass and accepted this Qing general who lost his brother. However, that night, gunshots rang out, and the Qing soldiers raided the village. They took back the food and livestock that the bandits had robbed from the Taiping army and killed the old people in the village in the fight. The furious Zhao Erhu looked at the dozens of Qing soldiers' muskets. He knew that if he resisted, the whole village would be slaughtered. So he ordered him to surrender. Seeing that he surrendered, the leading officer whipped his face with a whip, leaving 2 blood marks. How could Pang Qingyun not recognize them? The people who came were the soldiers of Queasy Camp. The Queasy Camp left in a swagger. The next day, the villagers could only pick up the scattered rice on the ground and bury their cold relatives. The bandits looked at the injured and disabled villagers, old and young, and felt very guilty. However, what made them desperate was that this winter, how many people would die without food? Pang Qingyun proposed a reasonable but dangerous proposal. Zhao Erhu really began to consider it. But some people who followed Zhao Erhu were dissatisfied. They felt that Pang Qingyun was coaxing people to join the army for his own selfish interests. Everyone knew that the Qing court was corrupt and was a more vicious party than the Taiping army. At this time, Zhang Wuyang proposed to submit a letter of surrender. The so-called letter of surrender means that each of the 3 of them killed an outsider. This ritual has a long history in ancient times, and it was written in water margin. At the end of the Northern Song dynasty, Lin Chong wanted to go to Liangshanpo to become a bandit. Wang Lun asked him to go down the mountain to kill a person and offer his head. This was the letter of surrender. The person who made the letter of surrender must commit an unforgivable crime, replace blood ties with evil, and use sin to show his promise and bind each other. Zhang Wuyang and Zhao Erhu killed an innocent passerby respectively. But Pang Qingyun hesitated. He didn't believe in the letter of surrender. But in the end, he still killed Zhao Erhu and Zhang Wuyang to make his people no longer homeless and bullied. But Pang Qingyun wanted to make a comeback and be loyal to the court. The 3 had different goals, and he needed the other 2 now. In any case, the letter of surrender was signed, and the 3 shared the sins from then on. Pang Qingyun was the first, Zhao Erhu was the second, and Zhang Wuyang was the third. Before they set off the next day, their colleagues in the village also performed a brotherhood ceremony together, living together and dying together. But a group of people left, led by Xu Jinglei, a man who still had Qing Dynasty hair. He said he would never surrender to the Qing Dynasty, and he must have been persecuted very badly. After joining the army, Pang Qingyun led 800 bandits to attack Xucheng. The bandits were untrained, and their fighting ability was uneven. On the other side, Xucheng had 200 foreign rifles and 5,000 people. Pang Qingyun thought that the only way was to fight fiercely. He found 200 brave warriors to rush forward into the range of the enemy's foreign rifles and win a 100-step disadvantage for the 200 archers who followed behind with a shorter range. This required them not to hide when they heard the gunshots, but to fight desperately in close combat. Many people would die in this ride, but no one said anything. Zhang Wuyang was the first to say that he wanted to go, but still no one responded to him. Until then, Zhao Erhu said that there would be 2 resettlement allowances for the dead and 3 for the living. People responded one after another. Relying on Zhao Erhu's reputation and people's desire for money, everyone was aroused to fight. In that era, don't even mention any lofty ideals. People have experienced all kinds of hardships, and only primitive ambitions remain. The war soon came, and the Taiping army on their side actually had cannons. Pang Qingyun's army was less than 1/5 of theirs, but they used dustpans, rattan baskets, and iron pots to block the guns. As Zhao Erhu killed the messenger with a knife, the blood of the group was activated and they rushed out. They tried their best to disperse, and they soon ran into the range of the foreign guns. The first row opened fire, and the first wave fell. The musketeers changed to the second row and moved forward, and the first row changed bullets. They changed 4 times in this 100-step run, and the time passed like years. Finally, they rushed within 100 steps, and the archers also rushed into the range. As they ran, they shot arrows. Although the range of the bows and arrows was only 100 steps, they won in terms of speed and density, and they finally disrupted the enemy's foreign gun team. The two armies clashed, and a bloody fight began. At this time, the Taiping army sent out cavalry again, and Zhao Erhu's cavalry team also rushed out impatiently. There were many enemy cavalry. Before the battle, Zhao Erhu led the team to blindfold the horses, allowing the horses to run fearlessly. Zhao Erhu was extremely brave and unstoppable. With such an offensive, the leader of the Taiping army was in chaos. He waved his hand and directly ordered the artillery team to fire at the place where the two flags were fighting. In order to destroy Zhao Erhu's cavalry, he could even sacrifice his own soldiers and horses. At this time, the battle situation was even more miserable, but their opponents were already in chaos. Pang Qingyun stared at Chen Gong's team, and the other side was still hesitating. He knew that if he waited any longer, there would be no chance. Pang Qingyun swooped with the last 8 banners, and he also put himself in the gamble. He rushed straight to the artillery team, killing all the enemies. The cannon fired directly at them, and all 8 horses fell down. They ran to the cannon. Pang Qingyun drove straight in, holding weapons, a knife at one end, a spear at the other. Wherever he went, there was either blood or broken limbs. Soon, he was surrounded by densely packed enemies who tried to stop him from destroying the remaining cannons. Pang Qingyun killed his way forward meter by meter, and finally, he reached a cannon. With just this one shot, the enemy artillery team was almost completely wiped out. Pang Qingyun was really a madman. At this time, a cannon, aimed at him who was lying on the ground, was about to fire. A brother saw it in time and rushed forward without hesitation. Seeing this chaotic world, the Taiping army could no longer hold back, and the entire army was dispatched. They wanted to kill all of Pang Qingyun and his group. Zhao Erhu and Zhang Wuyang rushed towards the eldest brother. Pang Qingyun got up again. He wanted to fight 1 against 100, but he was pierced through the left shoulder. He killed all the enemies with his last breath. He was exhausted. Fortunately, the last troops in the village arrived, and the 2 brothers came to Pang Qingyun. The remaining dozens of people gathered together, and they resisted the encirclement of hundreds of enemy troops. At that moment, seeing the fate of death and the 2 brothers around him, Pang Qingyun smiled. At that moment, Brotherhood really became the only thing in his complicated life. The well-trained Chen Gong team finally joined the battle, and the encirclement was magnificent. The Taiping army finally collapsed. Zhang Wuyang remembered what Pang Qingyun taught to capture the leader first. He penetrated the chaotic army, killed the leader with 1 knife, and then cut off his head. The battle was finally won. The second time he met the 3 officials, Official Chen was very happy. He stood up and said that he had a connection with Pang Qingyun. Official D also stood up and said that he would give him 5 battalions of soldiers. The subtext of this sentence was that I was more powerful. Official Chen's face changed, and he gave his general to Pang Qingyun. Only Official Jiang still smiled slightly. He called out Pang Qingyun's old rival, He Kui, the leader of the Kui battalion who had betrayed him. Official Jiang meant that no matter how he struggled and how many people died, the benefits of his winnings would belong to Official Jiang. He had the soldiers, and Official Jiang was the crops. Zhao Erhu didn't understand the meaning of the words. Nanjing is the heart of the Taiping army, and Suzhou is close to him. Zhao Erhu was too arrogant. At this time, Chen Guan grinned after thinking. He thought, what if they really did it? After saying goodbye to the 3 officials, Pang Qingyun told them that some people didn't want the war to end. Only if the war continued, they would benefit. This time, when they returned to the village, Zhao Erhu and his party brought a lot of silver. With this money, no one in the village would starve to death. It's just that many people who took it out at that time didn't bring it back. Zhang Wuyang found an old lady and gave her 4 times the money, but she cried and cried because her 2 sons died. They used their lives to exchange for food and clothing for their families for the rest of their lives. If they were not desperate, who would be willing to risk their lives for money? Zhang Wuyang was no longer welcomed by the villagers, and many people hid the boy when they saw him. Next, Pang Qingyun's troops were unstoppable, but every time they captured a place, the Kuizi camp would follow in the name of taking over the defense and replace them in looting. If this continued, the team would have no benefits and could not be maintained. They could only move faster. Pang Qingyun knew that they needed to have more prestige among the people. He decided to change the rules and establish military regulations. Originally, they could enter the city to loot for 3 days after winning the battle, but this time he decided to kill the soldiers who raped civilian women and distinguish them from the Kuizi camp that looted wantonly. But Zhao Erhu was unwilling to kill the people he brought out, because he knew their parents and families. The brother of one of the soldiers died in front of him and Zhang Wuyang. He brought them out to find a way to survive, so how could he kill them with his own hands? The 2 soldiers were buried, and Erhu began to sigh at the desolate graves. In the Battle of Suzhou, Pang Qingyun fought against military orders. There were no supplies for this battle. He had been besieging the city for 9 months, and both sides suffered countless casualties. There was also the Kui camp outside, which was eyeing him covetously. Pang Qingyun was overcast. He saw the soldiers starving and heard the seriously injured but not dead young man outside the trenches wailing, seeking help, then scolding and sobbing until the sound gradually died down and no one dared to save him. This battle was a dead end, but Pang Qingyun refused to admit defeat. He hurried back to ask for food and artillery from Officer Dai, but Officer D would not see him. Pang Qingyun did not look for Officer Chen, which showed that Officer Chen was powerless at this time, no matter what his position was. Finally, he made up his mind and went to look for He Kui, the enemy who had betrayed him and indirectly killed thousands of his brothers. But at this time, Pang Qingyun could go to him, which showed how deep his scheming was. The powerful only wanted more power and wealth. Pang Qingyun understood people's ambitions best, and he did not hide his own madness. He owed He Kui a debt comparable to usury and asked for 10 days of food. But he also had a plan. Before returning to Suzhou City, Pang Qingyun distributed all the food to the soldiers, and everyone choked and vomited while eating. He did not feel comfortable, but when he heard that Zhao Erhu had sneaked into the enemy camp without authorization and wanted to assassinate the city lord alone, he felt deeply powerless. It turned out that before he came back, Zhao Erhu could no longer bear his brothers starving and suffering, and he decided to take a gamble and sacrifice his life for the enemy's head. Zhao Erhu disguised himself as a drug dealer delivering opium and entered the city. He heard that the city lord loved to smoke opium, so he used this strategy to assassinate him. He did not plan to come back, but only wanted to end the war. It was fearless and reckless, and it was also a desperate gamble. He never thought that there were starving people everywhere in Suzhou City. After 9 months of siege, the city could no longer hold out. The people in the city looked ashen, just like his soldiers. Zhao Erhu came to the city lord, who was listening to an opera. But when he got closer, he found that his hair was disheveled, his voice was hoarse, and he looked lonely, unlike a city lord. Zhao Erhu thought that the city lord had fallen, and he even doubted how he had held on for 9 months. He handed over opium, but the city lord refused it. The man with the knife was Xu Jinglei, a fellow villager who had left Zhao Erhu 5 years ago. With him, Erhu's identity was exposed, but perhaps the city lord let him in because he heard him say that Zhao Erhu was kind and righteous. Zhao Erhu was not afraid at all, but he did not expect the city lord to ask everyone to withdraw and unload their weapons. He threw a sword to Zhao Erhu and then dueled with him. His swordsmanship was so crazy that Zhao Erhu could only parry. But every move he made was very sharp. It was not until he put Zhao Erhu's sword in front of him that Zhao Erhu understood his good intentions. The city lord gave him instructions with his last breath, and Zhao Erhu stood in awe. The Taiping army was crying, and they all knew why the city lord died. In this way, Pang Qingyun outside the city won without fighting. Seeing Zhao Erhu come out safe and sound, the whole army shouted his name. He was a hero. The hero was not happy, and Zhang Wuyang burst into tears on the spot. Pang Qingyun was puzzled after laughing, and he didn't know that war could be fought like this. However, after learning of Zhao Erhu's promise, Pang Qingyun closed the city gate. He refused to let these Taiping army go. These soldiers could not be persuaded to surrender, nor could they be placed behind the army, and they could not be left in Suzhou. All these options were too risky, leaving only one option: killing. This was not military tactics, it was treason. But Zhao Erhu had no power. In the fierce conflict, Pang Qingyun locked Erhu up. Jiang Wuyang believed in what his elder brother said, so he acted as the executioner again. When Zhao Erhu came out, he saw corpses all over the ground, and his faith collapsed. He wanted to go home and give up power. Many people wanted to go with him, but Pang Qingyun would not let them, saying it was a mutiny. He could have killed Zhao Erhu, but he did not, and could not kill him. Pang Qingyun rounded out the contradictory rules and gave a beautiful, heroic vision. He told everyone that he would capture Nanjing before the Kuizi camp. Finally, he knelt down and begged Zhao Erhu, who finally agreed. At this time, he did not know that this walk and kneeling had planted the seeds of disaster. Nanjing was captured quickly, and salutes were fired over the Forbidden City. All Taiping Heavenly Kingdom slogans were erased, and people began to shave their heads and keep their braids. The three brothers became heroes and legends. Zhao Erhu never said he would leave, and they lived in a big house and lived a good life. Zhao Erhu stayed with his family. But he acted like a bandit, putting out wine and food and paying tribute to his dead brothers. At the same time, he decided to pay military pay to his living brothers, but this was without Pang Qingyun's consent. Zhao Erhu's move not only touched the court's taboo, but also touched Pang Qingyun's reverse scale. The money was given to the good people, and Erhu did it. He called for 100 people to respond. Then what about Pang Qingyun? The rift between the two of them widened. On the other side, officials Jiang and He Kui were also calculating how to overthrow Pang Qingyun. He Kui was furious at Pang Qingyun's betrayal. He Kui found Zhao Erhu privately and forced Zhao Erhu to defect to Pang Qingyun. Although Zhao Erhu and Pang Qingyun had a grudge, he put loyalty first. In his heart, loyalty was greater than profit and grudges. No matter what Pang Qingyun's character was, he was still the eldest brother. In Zhao Erhu's own words, he was a man. A man should be clear about what he loves and hates. He wiped away the tears in his eyes with a strange smile, pointed at He Kui, and walked away. He did not betray his elder brother, who hurt him deeply after all. It was also on this day that Jiang Wuyang discovered that Zhao Erhu's wife Liansheng had an affair with Pang Qingyun. Their relationship began many years ago, even earlier than Jiang Wuyang knew Pang Qingyun. That year, after Pang Qingyun crawled out of the pile of dead bodies, he had a brief moment of loss or awakening. He had no desire to live and had nowhere to go. At that time, he saw the back of a woman fleeing, and he followed her from a distance. He followed all the way, and the woman noticed his following and stopped, and he didn't know what to do, so he walked forward slowly. But without a target to follow, he soon lost his strength. It was that woman who saved his life. She cooked porridge for Pang Qingyun, which was his first meal after his defeat. He drank it in big gulps, and halfway through, he suddenly vomited it all out. Then he cried. Only in front of Liansheng did Pang Qingyun show his vulnerable side. He was afraid of death, felt guilty and blamed himself, hated the world for being unkind, and sad for his own injustice. After all those furious, fierce, and brave moments, he cried bitterly, which was the real him. It was Liansheng who made Pang Qingyun feel that he was still alive. And among all the others, officers, soldiers, enemies, and brothers, Pang Qingyun lived for immortality every day. That would have required him to have stronger martial arts, more ruthless methods, and a higher status, and he would have to walk on thin ice all his life. They spent the night together that night, and Liansheng was gone at dawn. It was not until Pang Qingyun and Zhao Erhu returned to the village that he knew that Liansheng was Zhao Erhu's wife. Liansheng was originally a prostitute. She was taught by her madam to play the piano, chess, calligraphy, and painting, and was known as the Thin Horse of Yangzhou. One day, she was rescued by her childhood playmate. The playmate killed someone, so he had to take her to hide in the village, and then he became a bandit, and she became the wife of the bandit leader. The playmate was Zhao Erhu. He had complicated feelings for her. Zhao Erhu was a rough man who loved her but didn't understand her. She wanted to leave him several times, but that era was cruel and ruthless. Where could she go? That night, she talked with Pang Qingyun, who was well-read, experienced, knew where she came from and what she pursued, and she had good intentions for him. And Pang Qingyun also fell in love with Liansheng. but she was the only one who kept his most vulnerable side. The world and the times did not allow him to be vulnerable. He could only be strong with his brothers. After that, for the sake of his relationship with Zhao Erhu, Pang Qingyun stopped meeting Liansheng and never went back to the village. It was not until the Battle of Suzhou City that he thought Zhao Erhu had died in the city, and then he promised Liansheng to marry her. Unfortunately, Zhao Erhu did not die. After conquering Nanjing, Pang Qingyun and Liansheng had an affair until they were caught by Jiang Wuyang. Pang Qingyun used his eyes to warn Jiang Wuyang not to say too much. Pang Qingyun did not see Cixi's appearance clearly, and he did not dare to look directly at her. Li Lianying conveyed Cixi's love to Pang Qingyun, and Cixi gave Pang Qingyun a yellow jacket, and also appointed him as the governor of Liangjiang. This is a very important position. Official Chen reminded Pang Qingyun to thank her. After coming down from the court, Pang Qingyun wore the yellow jacket given by the emperor, and drank tea with Official D and Official Chen. Official D praised her at the beginning, but his words were sarcastic. Pang Qingyun was originally on good terms with Chen, but Chen said he did not belong to any faction. He seemed to be drawing a line, and it was also a warning. Dai's warning was more direct, but it also had the intention of winning him over. Chen, perhaps because he valued talent, made it clear. Only by following a faction could one survive. No matter how idealistic one was, this corrupt officialdom would not tolerate an independent and outstanding person. As a result, Pang Qingyun got up and left. Seeing this, Di Gong suddenly stopped him, and he put forward the court's request. Pang Qingyun immediately said to reduce the army. However, Di's second request was more fierce, and Pang Qingyun also understood it. The court wanted him to kill Zhao Erhu. He was too far away from crawling out of the pile of dead bodies that year. He was no longer like that year, free from worries and with nothing to lose. One day, Zhao Erhu had decided to resign and return home. A servant came to tell him that the Queasy camp wanted to kill Pang Qingyun. In order to save his elder brother, Zhao Erhu believed the information and rushed to the outside of the city alone to find him. On the other side, Jiang Wuyang also sensed the danger. His second brother could not be found anywhere. All the guards in the mansion were replaced by the imperial guards in the capital. He found Pang Qingyun, who was actually in the mansion. The naive Jiang Wuyang saw the murderous intention, but did not understand the murderous intention. He asked Pang Qingyun to wait for him, then he rushed to Zhao Erhu's house and found Liansheng. He still did not understand that Pang Qingyun was not pursuing friendship, not for the people around him to survive and live well. Liansheng died under his dagger. And outside the city, Zhao Erhu arrived at the meeting place with his elder brother, but there was no one here. Pang Qingyun held a farewell banquet for Zhao Erhu in the official residence. Zhao Erhu never understood human hearts nor human nature. He only had love and righteousness in his heart, but unfortunately, it also blinded him. He could not see that his childhood sweetheart who was rescued did not like such a life. He also could not see that his elder brother's ambition was greater than his conscience. He did not understand the complexity of the world and would always hurt the deep brotherly love. Before he died, he was still concerned about his elder brother's safety and felt guilty for not saving him. At this time, Jiang Wuyang confessed everything to Pang Qingyun. Pang Qingyun was not angry, but he finally cried. He would not punish Jiang Wuyang because he would be needed in the future. But he still cried, and the more he cried, the more painful it was. Even though he was dead, he who had pursued illusory righteousness all his life, he who had been strong all his life, he who had been walking on thin ice all his life, the only arms and warmth he could trust in his life were gone. On the day when Pang Qingyun took office as the Governor-General of Liangjiang, it was pouring rain and the ground was muddy. He had accomplished his mission, but he looked around as if he was surrounded by ambushes. He took the last few steps towards his official position. He was fully focused, but his soul was absent. So he took heavy steps. However, a knife stabbed at him, and he still could not dodge it like he did when he was young. When he came to his senses, he saw that the assassin was Jiang Wuyang. Jiang Wuyang was wearing the general boots that Pang Qingyun had given him, and every knife was deadly. Pang Qingyun couldn't bear to kill him. He told his men not to move. But Jiang Wuyang's attack was fierce, forcing him to use heavy hands. He kicked Jiang Wuyang's leg to make him unable to stand up again. But Jiang Wuyang just didn't fall down. He twisted Jiang Wuyang's arm again. Jiang Wuyang still limped to kill him. On the roof not far away, a gun slowly stretched out. At the moment when Jiang Wuyang handed out the knife, Pang Qingyun, who was shot in the back, did not dodge the knife. He finally fell down, and his tired life finally ended here. Who ordered the cold gun in the back? The movie did not give an answer. Maybe it was He Kui. He was angry with Pang Qingyun and set him up. Maybe it was Jiang Guan. He had a large army, although his official rank was slightly lower, but he had the strongest military force. How could he allow another army to compete with him? But Pang Qingyun did leave himself alone, so the person who wanted to kill him would have no worries. Jiang Guanren's words also pointed out the Queen Mother's position. Pang Qingyun was well aware of the interests and needs of the world, but he mistakenly took the interests of the country as the interests of the court, as the interests of Cixi, so Cixi regarded him as an outsider. The Pledge of Allegiance means knowing each other's dark side, and sometimes it also means exposing each other. On the basis of common uncleanness, they distinguish between their own people who share the same shame and outsiders who can be easily bullied. Pang Qingyun thought that only the grassroots outside the rules need to build trust in this way. But in fact, the court and the public are the same. Pang Qingyun is an extremely complex character. He knows the ways of the world and knows to borrow food from the enemy at a critical moment, and then betrays the enemy and wins the victory alone. He seems to be a person who understands the rules of the game, but when he really goes to the court, he seems to have turned back into an innocent boy. The emperor asked Cixi to exempt the people of Liansheng from taxes for 3 years, and Xia Chao refused to associate with the bureaucratic faction. Was Pang Qingyun a hero who died unjustly due to political conspiracy because of his unfulfilled ambitions for the country and the people? Or was he an ambitious, unjust, and deserved hero? Perhaps Pang Qingyun really had a sense of justice in his heart. He once simply believed in him, but after being betrayed, he hid among his brothers' bodies, and from then on, he understood the rules of the game. Since this is the rule, he played it this way. He learned to hide his true feelings, like a jackal, unscrupulous, and treacherous. But he actually hated all this in his heart. A power fighter, deceitful, partisan, he was treated as a chess piece and joined the chess game, and also treated others as chess pieces. But he said he had died a long time ago. Perhaps Pang Qingyun still expected that one day when his ambitions were realized, he could revive his original heart. So he put all his righteousness behind his power and endured it like delayed gratification. But the closer he got to that goal, the stronger his rejection of the rules of the game became. When he came to the court he had longed for, he might finally be unable to hold back his excitement and show his true feelings. But that court was not the sacred place he imagined, and the face of the supreme that he could not see clearly was just a mortal. The preciousness of idealism lies in that it is not flexible, and it cannot be weighed and calculated. It is not to lose faith, not to do small evils, and countless small righteousnesses merge into great righteousness, and to be faithful to one. It is impossible to judge Pang Qingyun's choice. I have never been afraid of where the sword will stab me, but we all need a world where people are no longer afraid. This world does not take violence and wealth as pride, does not take fragility and poverty as shame, does not take thick black as truth, and does not take kindness as straw dog. Hate should not be used, but should be used to get a warm system. Love should not be buried, but should be generous to admit that I need it, I have it too. Reality is indeed not beautiful. Throughout the ages, how many idealists have died as light as a feather? If people want to survive, they must follow the rules. A speck of dust in the era. If you are afraid of being swallowed by the era, you must become stronger. Hungry, angry, confused, and fearful, a person's emotions are like history, changing. Looking back at the end of history, it is an obvious black and white straight line. But in the process, it is a net that does not know where to fall. Who is a good person? Who is a gangster? One thought becomes a Buddha. One thought becomes a demon. Let us remember these moments of Pang Qingyun. He cried twice, once in Liansheng's arms, and once after Liansheng's death. He also laughed 4 times. The first time he and his brothers were ready to die in battle. The second time he and his brothers won the battle. The third time he saw Zhao Erhu was safe and sound. The fourth time he asked Jiang Wuyang to complete his oath of loyalty before he died.